All right, everybody. Thanks for hopping on. The plan tonight is to kind of talk about rules differences. It's not going to be all the rules differences because the last time the Referee Magazine printed a book about the differences between high school and college, it was like 240, and I'm sure there are only more now. So we're not going to dive into all of it. But I do want to start this with the rules changes from last year, and then we'll kind of dig into what's different between the two levels as we go forward. So starting with the high school stuff. What's changed in high school? Well, if you worked high school last year, this year, they've changed the rules about towels. Players can wear any solid colored towel. It may have a logo. Doesn't have to be the same for each player, but it can't be ball colored or penalty flag colored. So more than white towels are now legal in high school. This change with airborne players now brings the high school rule in line with the college rule relative to players who leap from or who are airborne, having last been in contact with something that was out of bounds. In the old rule, you were in bounds if you weren't actively out of bounds, right? So if you're not touching the ground out of bounds, you're in bounds by definition. And now, if you were last on the ground out of bounds and you're airborne, you're still out of bounds till you return. So again, this now brings the rule in high school more in line with the college rule. They added a defenseless player definition, which does include players who intercept the pass. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it because high school has not done a very good job of releasing the wide language on this quite yet. They did make a change to last year's change about intentional grounding, which basically says that instead of anybody being able to have the ball outside the lateral limits of the free blocking zone and legally ground the ball, that rule or that exception only applies to the player who possesses the ball after the snap ends, which again is more like the college rule than it was before, where anybody could just happen to have the ball outside the tackle box, or excuse me, outside the free blocking zone and get it back to line of scrimmage and they'd be fine. They finally dumped intentional pass interference from the rule book. It is no longer a thing. Not that I've ever seen anybody call PI and then the unsportsmanlike conduct addition, 15-yard addition pass interference in high school, but now it's not even an option. And by far the most impactful change in high school is the changes to penalty enforcement. Again, I'm not getting into all of those now, except to say that enforcement in high school is now much closer to enforcement in college. Basically, a foul by the offense behind the line of scrimmage, but in the field of play, is enforced from the previous spot with a few very specific exceptions, including the illegal participation where the player steps out and returns, illegal batting, illegal kicking, or illegal forward pass. Those are all still enforced from the spot of the foul. And still, if that foul occurs in A's end zone, it's a safety if the penalty is accepted. A foul by the defense is enforced from the previous spot in the event that the offense's run ends behind the line of scrimmage. So now it's not a situation where I can shoot through the gap as a defensive lineman and sack the quarterback by pulling them down by their face mask 8 yards in the backfield, and the offense only nets 7 yards. Now they'd net the full 15 from the previous spot. Any questions about that? So that's the big stuff on the high school side. On the college side, a lot of these things you've probably seen. Prop did approve these changes, even though I haven't seen a full press release. I've seen a media release from the NCAA, but I haven't seen like the release in the CFO on Arbiter. But I also wonder how much use Arbiter is going to be to the CFO going forward, knowing that they're transitioning to RefQuest next year, so they may be winding down their commitment there. But stuff that's rule changes. They made some changes to the drone policy, basically taking it out of our hands. We're not going to penalize, but they can't have drones over the field or team area when squad members are present. So basically, starting 90 minutes before the game, when we take jurisdiction, there shouldn't be any drones over the field of play. Could it still happen outside the limit lines, but that's a conference thing or game management thing and doesn't concern us. Another game management thing is that they'll determine the timing of halftime activities as long as the field is available to squad members no later than 3 minutes prior to the second half. So that's the big change. This is the big deal with the kickers and stuff is they can't come out and start kicking while the band's still on the field like they used to do. This is just putting that in writing. On the extension of periods, go ahead.
Quick question, if I can jump back to the drone policy.
Sure.
A lot of the bands now are having drones for the halftime show. So can they use it during halftime as long as players not on the field?
Yep.
All right.
As long as there are no team, there can't be uniform or no squad members present and band, obviously the band doesn't count. So if they want to use drones, they can go nuts. And if they want to use drones when we go back into the locker room after pregame warmups, go nuts. Not that it's not, the easiest answer is if I'm not out there to see it, how can I do anything about it? So that's kind of I think that's the philosophy there.
Correct. I just hate that if we're in the locker room, somebody come running in, hey, they got a drone, I think we're supposed to do something.
Nope. No, but they're going to they'll do that anyway, whether it was the rule or not. So it doesn't really matter too much, I don't think. On the extension of period stuff, we will not extend the period if we have an accepted penalty on the last time down of the first and third period. We'll roll that right into the second and fourth. We will extend the period still at the end of the second and fourth period. So any of the stuff that was in 3-2-3 for extension period now only applies at the end of halves and not at the end of every quarter. The obvious, this is a change that I think everybody's at least aware of. We will no longer stop the game clock if team A gains a first down inbounds other than with less than 2 minutes remaining in the second and fourth quarter. However, I did see a proposal go through that could potentially federate the playing rules by division. And I believe Prop sent this rule change back to the Division III Council for potential approval. So it's possible that this rule will not apply in Division III. I don't know that, obviously I can't answer whether or not that's going to be the case, but for most, for games in Division I and Division II, and who knows what NAI is going to do, we just won't stop the clock if A gains a first down in bounds. They carry it out of bounds, we'll still stop the clock. But the biggest change, I think, and one of the things doesn't happen a lot, so sometimes it's a little tricky to remember, is if we have a change of possession, a double change, an ABA play where A fumbles and B recovers and B moves the ball and then they fumble and A recovers. If A's got the ball at the end of the down and the play ended in bounds, more than 2 minutes to go in the half, we should not stop the clock for that. So in that play I just described, whoever's covering the play should just be hand up into the play to start the play clock and indicate the play's over. Questions on that? As a reminder, as it relates to timing rules in college, remember that anytime the game clock would start on the snap supersedes anytime the game clock would start on the ready unless the 10-second runoff applies. So like if I punt the ball and B muffs it and A recovers, we're still stopping the clock at the end of that play because we had a legal kick during the down, which still triggers a stoppage. The consecutive charge team timeouts, teams can't do that anymore. This is most commonly done to ice kickers at the end of half or game. There's no penalty for teams to do it other than we just don't grant after the first. So I would, as the crew lists come out and stuff, work with your crew to determine how you're going to communicate that effectively to prevent somebody from granting a timeout, an excess timeout. I would especially think this might be a problem for media games if a team timeout triggers a media timeout and we go away for 2.5 minutes and then we come back and they don't like something and they want another timeout. Now we could argue that that's a communication issue with the team, but it's still something we've got to be alert to. And then the instant replay change with the instant replay, without an instant replay official. I'm going to hopefully have one of our attendees in the study group who worked in the MIAA, the Division II MIAA last year, where they experimented with this rule, talk about how that went in a future meeting. But we're not going to, there basically is now a process by which the referee could go review plays, all targeting plays, and then everything else is a coach's challenge. Questions on the college rule changes? I also think, and this happened last year, I think, but it's not in the book and it didn't come up this year. Does anybody know, are we requiring in Division I for everybody to be fully no exposed skin below the waist. Is that in? That was the thing they proposed last year and they pushed it to this year, but I didn't see it addressed by prop. Folt, Siegel, do you guys know?
I have not heard that.
Okay. I did remember seeing it in last year's list of things, but I didn't see it addressed by prop. So I wonder if it's just prop didn't vote on it because it's already good to change. Because I do know that there were some players in the spring that were asking me questions about it. And I just hadn't thought about it because I didn't see it in the last list of changes. So, okay. So those are the rules changes from last year, from 2022 to 2023. So as I mentioned before, this list is long, right? The list of things that are different between high school and college is long. I'm not going to cover everything. Specifically on the list of things I'm not going to cover includes how long the quarters are, all the equipment and field marking differences, instant replay generally, I'm not talking about, and the overtime and extra periods. All those things are different. I don't want to get down in the minutia of everything. I don't think that's a lot of that stuff's particularly big. Plus, at least as it relates to extra periods, a lot of states do different things than what the rule book says. So, the Federation does one thing, but I know at least 3 states do different things than just first and goal to 10. So move on from there. So let's start with the high school stuff as it relates to, we're going to talk about close line play now. And I'm going to start with the free blocking zone in high school. And this is the diagram that the NFHS provides for the free blocking zone. The zone is 3 yards on each side of the ball and 4 yards wide on each side of the line. Only the players who are on the line and in the zone may block below the waist. So in all of these cases, we have a very clear definition of who's an offensive lineman in high school, involving breaking the waist of the snapper. In defense, defensively, we put any player within a yard. We call them a lineman. Only offensive players who are on the line and in the zone may block in the back. Clipping is now illegal at all times in high school. That's a relatively recent change. But the free blocking zone only exists while the ball's in the zone. As it relates to blocking in the back, offensive linemen who are in the zone of the snap can block in the back. I said clipping's illegal. There is no place outside the free blocking zone where blocking below the waist is legal. So inside the zone, a lineman may go low against another lineman while the ball and the blocker in the zone. That's legal. Everything else is illegal. The only other thing relative to the free blocking zone is the change from last year about intentional grounding. And so as the rules, as I mentioned previously with the rules clarification in high school, the player who controls the snap carries the ball outside the lateral limit of the free blocking zone. They don't have to stay out. They just have to take the ball out. They can legally ground the ball by throwing it back to the line of scrimmage or line of scrimmage extended out of bounds. Questions on any of that stuff? So let's compare and contrast the free blocking zone to the blocking zone and the tackle box as they exist in college. So the rectangle outline in red is the collegiate blocking zone or rectangular area, which is sometimes referred to in the rule book. I'm a little surprised that the blocking zone even still exists with all of the safety changes they've made over the years, because it's certainly much larger than the tackle box. But only offensive players in the line of scrimmage within the blocking zone, which extends 5 yards laterally in each direction and 3 yards on both sides of the neutral zone, may legally clip above the knee in the zone. But with the changes about blocking below the waist, the only players who are eligible to clip in the zone are the same players who can legally block below the waist on their initial charge. So we're really dealing with only A and B linemen and only between the tackles for all intents and purposes. Players who are on the line within the zone can't leave the zone and return and clip. And blocking in the back is legal under the same conditions that I just described. The blocking zone, much like the tackle box, exists until the ball is in player possession outside the zone or until the ball is muffed or fumbled outside the zone. So I mentioned that we have kind of like multiple parameters about clipping related to the blocking zone and also the tackle box. And as a comparison, this is the tackle box, right? The tackle box is this area here bounded by the tackles. There's a distance that if the tackles are spread out too far that they are outside the tackle box, but nobody lines up like that. But these players inside the tackle box or the 1 yard extension of the tackle box are the ones who can block low from the side on their initial charge. They could also legally clip on their initial charge. But after we go from initial charge, the blocking below the waist restrictions change. They have to, everybody that's not an unrestricted lineman on an initial charge has to block below the waist from the front. And they can only do that until the ball leaves the zone, and they can't leave the zone and block low. So a lot of teams that run the option, this has really impacted them last year because now they can't necessarily have that wing back or tight end cut. A tight end is not allowed to block low anymore because they're not in the tackle box. And unless they're running a tackle over with a tight end and the tackle on the backside in the tackle position, they're not going to be able to block low anyway. Other things that relate to the tackle box, just like in high school now, the exception for grounding beyond the neutral zone applies only to the player who controls the snap, and if they are or have been outside the tackle box with possession. And the tackle box, much like the blocking zone, also disintegrates when the ball leaves it. Questions about that stuff? All right, so let's take a look at some examples here. At the snap, right tackle A76 goes low and clips defensive tackle B91 in the neutral zone. The contact against B91 is A in the back of the thigh or B below the knee. Well, in high school, that's clipping. That's a foul for clipping. Doesn't matter. But in college, that first block that I described is a legal block because I can legally clip between the waist and the knee on my initial charge. But below the knee, whether it's initial charge or not, is going to be a foul for clipping. Make sense? Cool. All right, I mentioned some differences here. I mentioned the change with high school football. Airborne players are now based on where they were last in contact with the ground or some other object that is out of bounds. But if any A or K player goes out of bounds on their own and returns, that is a foul for illegal participation. The 15-yard foul for illegal participation. Whereas in college, same deal. Now the rules are the same with airborne players. But if an eligible receiver goes out on their own and returns, it's only a foul if they're first to touch the pass. So if they're not the first to touch the pass, they have not fouled. However, a kicking team player who goes out of bounds on their own during the kick and returns has fouled just for return. So again, we got to think about pass plays versus kick plays and how that stuff is different because that's the same free kick or scrimmage kick, same deal. Just the return in that case is a foul. But for pass plays, they need to go out of bounds on their own, return, and be first to touch. Questions? All right, so here's another example. Receiver A88 steps out of bounds on their own, leaps in the air, controls the ball while airborne, lands in bounds, and is immediately tackled. Well, now, due to the rule change, these are both incomplete passes. In high school and college, this is an incomplete pass. The ball's dead as soon as A88 touches it, because A88 is considered an out-of-bounds player by definition, which is the same rule in college. So this is now the same. So here's another example. 88 steps out of bounds on their own, reestablishes inbounds, leaps in the air, controls the ball while airborne, lands inbounds, is immediately tackled. So here again is where the rules are different. In high school, it's a completed pass, but we have a foul for illegal participation, which would be enforced at the previous spot because it occurred during a loose ball play beyond the line. In college, it is also a completed pass, but it is a foul for illegal touching because they were the first to touch the ball after reestablishing inbounds. Here's another example. Step out of bounds on their own, reestablish inbounds, leap in the air, control the ball, but there's been a tip by a defensive player prior to them controlling the ball. They land in bounds and they're immediately tackled. In high school, this is still a completion, but it's still a foul for illegal participation. It doesn't matter that B touched the ball in high school. It's still an illegal participation foul. In college, this is just a completed pass. There's no foul. The illegal touching is off because of the defensive touch. We don't have a foul on this play in college. So everybody sees the difference in these three plays and how we got to where we got on the rulings.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you, somebody, for talking to me. I appreciate that. Okay, batting. Let's talk about batting. So scrimmage kicks in both rules codes, scrimmage kicks may be batted toward the kicking team's goal line. That is legal. But in high school, any other batting of a grounded loose ball in any direction is illegal. Whereas in college, a grounded loose ball may be batted backward, except in the end zone. It's always illegal to bat the ball in the end zone. So here are some examples. Third down play. A7 fumbles the ball near the sideline. As the ball is airborne over the sideline, B8 bats the ball back toward Team B's goal line to prevent it from going out of bounds. The ball is recovered 5 yards beyond the spot of A7's fumble. Well, in the high school code, this is a foul. That batting by B8 of the grounded loose ball is a foul. It's illegal batting, 10-yard penalty. In this case, from the end of the run, assuming that the end of the run is beyond the line of scrimmage. Now, because of the rule change, behind the line of scrimmage to be penalized from the previous spot. However, in college, the bat by B8 is legal because the bat is toward B's goal line. As long as it's in the direction of the batting team's goal line, it is not an illegal bat. Questions on that? All right, so penalty enforcement. The nice part about this is that I probably won't have to talk about penalty enforcement in this presentation very much going forward. There are some differences, but it is now very similar to the NCAA for most plays. The big differences are only our roughing fouls, passer, snapper, kicker, holder, carry automatic first downs. There are no other automatic first down fouls in high school. We only tack on roughing the passer. We will only tack that on non-scoring plays. But on scoring plays, it doesn't matter what the foul is. If it's by the opponent of the scoring team, 5, 10, or 15, we will tack that on. But if they don't score, we could only tack on roughing the passer on pass plays. 15-yard dead ball fouls or live ball fouls enforced as dead ball fouls by opponents cancel if the number are equal. So if there are 2 on each team, they'll all cancel. But if it's 2 and 1, 1 cancels, we still have 1 to enforce. On the college side, all but 1 applies during running plays beyond the neutral zone. This is generally true of the way the high school changed the rules, but not as clear. The language I've seen, I didn't love when I saw it. We'll see what the final language is when we get there. All unsportsmanlike and unnecessary roughness personal fouls by B include automatic first downs. So does defensive pass interference. So any of those types of fouls by B or defensive holding, there's a lot of fouls on this list. A lot of defensive fouls are automatic first down, whereas only roughing fouls in high school are auto first. All personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties by B are tack-ons on pass plays. So we will tack those on a pass play, even if enforcement would, under normal circumstances, be from the previous spot. All personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct fouls on scores carry over, but any of our 5 and 10-yard penalties are declined by rule. So whereas in high school, if we have boy, do I not have a great example of this because we don't have 5-yard face mask. We don't have a 5-yard face mask in high school.
Defensive holding.
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. We'll say we have defensive holding on a pass play. The pass is complete and it's a touchdown. In college, that penalty for that foul is declined by rule because they scored a touchdown. In high school, that defensive holding could be tacked on to the try or the kickoff. Big difference in enforcement for some of these dead ball fouls in college is if each team commits at least 1 15-yard dead ball foul or live ball foul enforced as dead, they all cancel. So it could be 5 against 1, and we would offset them all. So here are some examples. Did I go in the wrong direction? Yeah, I might have. Or I copied a slide from the wrong place. Never mind. So let's talk about free kicks. No examples there. In high school, a 2-inch tee is legal, and neither foot of a K player may touch the 5-yard line behind a free kick spot. So I need to make sure that my back foot is in front of, we're kicking off from the 40 like we normally do. My back foot is in front of and not touching the 35-yard line. It is encroachment in high school, a dead ball foul to not have, or to have 4 players or less than 4 players on either side of the kicker and not more than 1 player more than 5 yards behind the free kick line. And that player has to kick the ball. Those are all dead ball fouls versus those actions being live ball fouls in college. If a kickoff goes out of bounds, it's either 25 yards from the previous spot or +5 to the return for the receiving team, whichever's better. As a general philosophy, and I'm certainly going to cover this again when we talk about penalty enforcement here in a couple of months before the test, we don't give teams both of these options, right? We're going to give them the best one. The best option is either 25 yards to the previous spot or R +5. If the ball goes out of bounds at the 5-yard line, I'm not going to give them the 10-yard line as an option. Wedge formations are legal. In fact, they're not defined in high school, so we don't have to worry about them. Doesn't matter how many players line up shoulder to shoulder. None of that stuff is a foul. In college, the 1-inch tee is all that's legal. And either foot of a kicking team player must touch or be inside the 5-yard line behind a free kick spot. So whereas we could not touch the line with either foot in high school, as long as part of either foot is touching the line, we're good. So we could have the back foot behind the 30 and be fine, as long as the front foot is touching the 30. And it's feet, not hands. So if a player is in a 3-point stance on a kickoff, I don't care that their hand is in front of the line. We need to have at least a foot in front of the line, on or in front of the line. All of the fouls that I mentioned before being dead ball fouls in high school are live ball fouls in college, with the penalty option to enforce from the end of the run as long as the receiving team has the ball. Big difference in KOB is it's 30 yards from previous spot or +5. Again, I'm only going to give one of those choices to the receiving team. And the wedge stuff is illegal in college. It is illegal for 2 or more members of the receiving team to intentionally form a wedge for the purpose of blocking for the ball carrier after the ball's been kicked, except when the kick is from an obvious onside kick formation. And we wouldn't penalize this if the kick ended with a fair catch or a touchback. But we do have a definition for a wedge, and we know when it's illegal. Questions about free kicks?
Nick, is there's 3 options. I'm asking this question. Are there 3 options for kickoff out of bounds? The +5 tack on, the +5 from or -5 from the previous spot, and the 25 yards from the previous spot in both codes?
There's yes, re-kick is an option, but I would still say there are three options by rule, but there are in practice only 2 options, right? Like you're either going to make them push them back and re-kick, or I'm going to give them the better of the penalty from the previous spot or +5 from the dead ball spot, right? Like that's how you would handle that situation, right?
Right.
Right.
What I'm asking is the re-kick option an option in both codes? That's my
it is always an option to re-kick. Yes, thank you. All right, scrimmage kicks. The numbering exception stuff in high school differs based on the type of kick and the down, and this stuff is tricky and coaches don't understand it. And it's a good way for a team to lose a game on an obscure rule at the end of the game. Basically, the numbering exception only applies on 4th down or on a try whenever K is in a scrimmage kick formation. But on 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down, only the snapper can be a scrimmage numbering exception player. So let's say we're in a situation at the end of the game where the team runs out their normal field goal unit to kick a game-winning field goal on 2nd down, and we've got like 84 and 36 on the ball, and the kick is up and it's good, and we have a flag, or we should have a flag. We probably don't have a flag, but we should have a flag by rule for them having a numbering exception problem. There are no restrictions on the receiving team's alignment on a scrimmage kick in high school. If a team illegally carries the ball beyond the neutral zone and kicks it, the ball remains live. We treat it just like a fumble. A 2-inch tee is legal to kick field goals in high school football. Those are the big differences as it relates to those things. In college, if the kicking team is in a scrimmage kick formation and it's obvious that a kick may be attempted, the numbering exception is on. So if they come out on 3rd or 4th down in a scrimmage kick formation, it's reasonable to assume they're going to kick on 3rd or 4th down. We're good. or if it was second down at the end of the game, it's reasonable to assume they would kick a field goal in that situation. The numbering exception applies. B linemen in college are prohibited from lining up inside the frame of the snapper. They need to take an initial position outside the frame of the snapper. Really good umpires will remind them of that and potentially tap them out of the way because we don't want fouls, right? We want to try to avoid this if we can. If the ball is carried beyond the neutral zone and illegally kicked, the ball becomes dead when the ball is kicked and is penalized from the previous spot with a loss of 5 yards and a loss of down. And you don't get a T in college. We'd make that an illegal kick. We'd penalize it 5 yards in the previous spot. I do want to make a note about kicker protection. College has the rule where if the kicker carries the ball outside of the tackle box, they are not protected as a kicker. That does mean that they could potentially be protected from like a super late hit, but they're not protected as a kicker. In high school, a kicker is protected no matter where they carry the ball until they've had a reasonable opportunity to regain their balance. It is not a foul if a player is blocked into contact in high school. Whereas in college, it's not a foul if the defender is illegally blocked into contact with a kicker or holder. So here are some examples. And this is pretty much the play I just described. 3 seconds left in the game. A attempts a third down field goal to win. Player numbers of the linemen are as follows. I'm not going to read them all, but you can see there we have some numbering exception players on the line. 11 is the snapper. The field goal attempt is successful as time expires. Tough break for the high school coach, who you've probably then flagged for an additional 15-yard penalty once you explain to them what the rule is. But this is illegal numbering. 5 yards, previous spot, extend the period. College, good. Field goal, good. Game over. Let's go home. Questions about that? Okay. Pass interference, DPI specifically in a high school code, if there's contact while the pass is in the air, it's not a foul. If contact is away from the direction of the pass, that's kind of generally the college rule. It's phrased a little differently. Penalty is 15 yards, all but one, no auto first, but you can tack pass interference on a scoring play in high school. So that 15-yard penalty could be carried over to the try or the kickoff. Interference still applies if an eligible receiver voluntarily goes out of bounds and returns inbounds, but this is, as I mentioned before, a foul for illegal participation. But they could still be interfered with. They have not lost their eligibility by going out of bounds into that circumstance. And interference restrictions do apply if a forward pass is touched behind the line by A and carries on and goes beyond the line before it's caught. All right, that is also a thing that is different. If B touches it behind the line in high school, no interference restrictions are off. But if A just muffs it and then the ball is then caught beyond, we could still have pass interference restrictions. Contact fouls against eligible receivers beyond the neutral zone do not include automatic first downs in high school. In college, the pass has to be catchable to the receiver who is being interfered with for it to be a foul for pass interference, which is ultimately, that's a semantic difference between what high school says and what college says, but catchability is a factor, whereas it is not a factor in high school. If the pass is thrown to the receiver who's being interfered with in high school, if it's thrown at them and they're being interfered with, it doesn't matter that it was sailed over their head. Catchability is not a factor. Enforcement is obviously different. Spot foul in college, if it's less than 15 yards, there is the special enforcement. It is not ever half the distance until we get to the try down at the 3 or the 2 yard line. But no foul outside the 2 on a regular scrimmage down can take the ball inside the 2. So if we snap at the 17, the foul's in the end zone, we're going to put the ball at the 2 yard line on PI. There is no pass interference if the team just simulates a scrimmage kick, like a high lobbing kick or high lobbing pass to simulate a kick. That could be a foul for pass interference in high school. It cannot be a foul for pass interference in college. A player who goes out of bounds on their own and returns inbounds can be legally interfered with because they are no longer eligible. That's the thing they gave up by going out of bounds. And since pass interference restrictions only apply to eligible receivers, they can be, if I interfere with a player who's gone out of bounds on their own and return, I am not guilty of pass interference. Now, that may require the officials to get together and put that play together, because there's probably still going to be a flag down depending on who sees the player out of bounds. But that action is not a foul for pass interference. There could still be a foul for potential illegal touch. Interference restrictions do not apply if a forward pass is touched by any player behind the line of scrimmage. But any contact foul against an eligible receiver beyond the neutral zone does include an automatic first. So defensive holding now, and now defensive holding in all categories carries an automatic first down. So here's some examples. 3rd and 10 at the 18, A1 throws pass to A89 in the end zone, B1 or B81 commits pass interference. Well, in high school, we're just going to go half the distance, and it's not an automatic first down. So now it's 3rd and 1 at the 9. In college, we'll go the full 15, and it's an automatic first. So we're going to go 1st and goal at the 3. Same thing, except now the PI is at the 15-yard line, which is only 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. In high school, same result. Half the distance to the goal, not automatic first down, still 3rd and 1 at the 9. In college, we'll go spot foul, auto first, and move on. Questions about that?
Yeah, Nick, on the special enforcement can you go back one slide, please? Perfect,
I
right
assume
there.
you mean this slide.
Yeah, that works. Spot foul less than 15 yards, and then the special enforcement inside the 17-yard line. This only applies for pass interference on the defense, correct? No other penalty carries this enforcement.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's talk timing. If the ball becomes dead out of bounds in high school, the game clock will start on the snap under all circumstances. There is not a circumstance where that is not a true statement. The game clock will start on the snap after a legal kick only if a new series is awarded to either team. If a new series is not awarded, maybe they tried to punt on 3rd and a mile and the kick was blocked and the kicking team jumped on it and maintained possession, the clock would not stop. If we have an accepted delay of game penalty, the game clock will always start on the snap. In college, the game clock starts on the snap only during the last 2 minutes of each half when the ball becomes dead out of bounds, with the exception of a forward fumble out of bounds, which will always cause the game clock to start on the ready for play, regardless of the time of the game. The game clock will always start on the snap following a legal kick. And the game clock will start on the snap after a delay penalty, regardless of whether it is accepted or declined if it's committed by a team in scrimmage kick formation. If it's not committed by a team in scrimmage kick formation, then other rules apply here, and we could just go on the ready for play. And this also has nothing about the 10-second runoff yet. I do have some stuff about 10-second runoffs that would change some of the stuff I just mentioned. Additionally, in high school, the game clock's going to start on the ready for play if A is awarded a new series. If we have an accepted penalty with less than 2 minutes remaining in either half, and actually this has changed to, I don't think the penalty has to be accepted anymore. It used to have to be accepted. If there's a penalty with less than 2 minutes remaining in either half, whoever is the offended team could start the game clock on the snap if it would otherwise start on the ready for play. And there is no provision for a 10-second runoff. So there are no situations that there's a foul that we're going to take time off the clock for. In college, now with the rule change, other than the last 2 minutes of the half, the game clock will not stop to award a new series. So I really encourage you, if you still have snaps left for you this spring, to get practicing that, because that's a tough thing to unlearn at the college level if you're used to stopping the clock all the time on first downs. In the last 2 minutes of a half, if we stop the game clock to administer a penalty for a foul by the team who is ahead in the score, or either team if the score is tied, the offended team has the option to start the game clock on the snap if it would otherwise start on the ready. And then there is a 10-second runoff provision. So talking about 10-second runoffs, what do we know about 10-second runoffs in college football? Any foul last minute or 59 seconds or less on the game clock, either half. Any foul that prevents the snap, like a false start, offside with contact, etc. Intentional grounding to stop the clock, illegal forward pass beyond the neutral zone that's incomplete, backward pass out of bounds to stop the clock, or any other foul that committed with the intent of stopping the clock or that has the effect of immediately stopping the clock. In those cases, there's the option for the runoff, but the team has to accept the yardage to also have the option for the runoff. Teams can avoid the runoff by taking a charge team timeout in those cases. If we have the runoff, the game clock starts on the ready for play. If we decline the runoff, it starts on the snap. And the runoff rules regarding starting the game clock on the ready for play supersede any other game clock rule that would start the game clock on the snap. So we have those situations, and this hasn't happened in a couple of seasons. But if we're under a minute and we have intentional grounding in the end zone that results in a safety, and where the next play is a safety kick, we could be in a situation where we're going to start the game clock on the ready for play of the free kick down, which is super unusual, but that's the way the rule works. I think that happened like the first year or two of the 10-second runoff. Questions about the timing stuff that's different. All right.
Nick, there's no,
Go ahead,
so
Steve.
obviously there's no replay related 10-second runoff, but in high school, but I understand that there's also no like helmet removal 10-second runoff.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no 10-second runoff for any reason in high school.
There was no reason for a 10-second runoff in a high school football game. That is correct.
Thank you.
It's horse collar tackle. Nobody can grab the inside back collar, the shoulder pads or jersey, or the nameplate, or the inside collar or the side, and subsequently pull that opponent to the ground. Doesn't need to be an immediate snap down, and there are not exceptions for the tackle box or the quarterback in the pocket. So anytime that happens in high school, it is a foul for a horse collar tackle. In college, it's very similar as to where they can't grab, but it does require an immediate yank down. And a runner in the tackle box or quarterback in the pocket can be legally horse collared. There is an exception to the horse collar rule for those players specifically. But as a reminder, the tackle box goes away when the ball is carried out. So if I carry the ball outside the tackle box and return to the tackle box and I'm horse collared, it is a foul for illegal horse collar tackle.
Nick, about the horse collar, the offensive player has to fall on his back. You know, when you have the hand in the collar, he has to fall on his back. Now, if he falls on his side or forward, that's not classified as a horse collar, right?
Well, they have to fall in the direction of the horse collar. So I could be horse collared to the side, and then I would expect to fall on my side. But basically, you need to fall in the direction where the grasp is, for it to be.
Okay.
But
All right.
if they fall forward, it is not a horse collar tackle.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at. So you can pull it down from the, obviously, if it looks like, it may look more like a face mask, so you pull it down from the front. But if you pull an offensive player by the collar and he pulls and he falls backward, it's more of a legitimate call. But if he falls on his side, it still can be classified as a horse collar, though.
Yes, because we still restrict them from grabbing the side.
Okay.
Down immediate. And again, we're looking at the snap downs, the yank downs, not the hand up here and I ride him for a couple of yards and he goes down. So we're looking for that immediate yank.
Okay. All right.
Good question though. So here's an example. A17 set up to pass in the pocket when B98 grabs his nameplate and pulls him immediately backward to the ground. In high school, this is a foul for a horse collar tackle, and with the new rule, we would enforce it at the previous spot. In college, this is legal. That's a legal action against the quarterback in the pocket. All right, try downs. The ball is dead. If a kick try fails, as soon as it's obvious that it's not going to score, like it's blocked or something, or if B gains possession, the play's over. B cannot score on a try under any circumstances. The ball does remain alive on a fumble if team A recovers the ball. And we would not attempt the try following a touchdown in the last time down to the game if the game is decided and qualification for the playoffs is not a factor. So game decided in high school means that the team that just scored is winning or is trailing by 2 or less. Because since we've established that B can't score, there's no way for A to concede any points. So if A's up 1, we're going to leave unless the state has specific rules about playoff qualification. For college, keep that ball live as after any field goal attempt. B could score 2 points if they take it back. Prior to a change of possession, the try ends if a player of A fumbles and any teammate recovers. And we would not attempt following a touchdown following a touchdown the last time down to the game if the game is decided. Also, relatively recently, teams can waive the try if they so choose. Questions about any of that stuff? So similar circumstances, we would theoretically line up, like we would attempt the try if the offense were up 1 or 2, unless they told us they didn't want to. Now I would assume that they're not going to want to, and we're probably just going to leave anyway, but the rules would indicate that we would be prepared to run that try because B can score. But again, from a practical application standpoint, A doesn't want to lose. They were going to waive the try. So here we go. Kick try. B98 blocks the kick. Ball's recovered by A47, who runs the ball into B's end zone. In high school, the try is over as soon as that kick is blocked, and it's apparent it's not going to score. In college, it's 2 points for A. All right, fumbles and backward passes. A forward fumble out of bounds in high school is spotted where it becomes dead, and the clock starts on the snap. So if I fumble the ball forward and it goes out of bounds 5 yards ahead of me, that's where I get the ball. There is no such rule as the 4th down fumble rule. So it doesn't matter what down I fumble, and at any time, any player on either team can pick the fumble up and run with it. Backward passes can be thrown by any player at any time for any reason, including out of bounds to stop the clock. Whereas in college, a forward fumble out of bounds is returned to the spot of the fumble, and the game clock starts on the ready at all times. The 4th down fumble rule is in effect. We talked about the 4th down fumble rule when I was talking about tries, but again, if it's 4th down, only the fumbler on A, prior to a change of possession, can advance their own fumble. So, and this is a good opportunity to remind everybody that the snap is a backward pass and not a fumble. So even if the quarterback's up under center, if the exchange is bad, that is a backward pass. So anybody could pick that ball up and advance it. But if I've controlled the snap and I turn and I try to hand the ball off to somebody and we screw up the exchange, I fumble. So I'm the only player that could then pick the ball up and advance it. So I'm standing here and I try to hand the ball off to my teammate, and he can't, we don't complete that exchange on 4th down, and he picks the ball up, the play's over. Backward passes in college may not be thrown intentionally out of bounds to conserve time. This would be a situation where we could potentially trigger a 10-second runoff in the last minute. That's what I've got. Those are the big things. There's obviously more. I mentioned there's a ton of other stuff. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? All right. Well, clearly I crushed it, so I appreciate that for everybody.
Hey, Nick,
Yes, Bill.
as far as mechanics is concerned, is there anything else that is different from like a live ball substitution on the defense, a defensive offside, a kick crossing the plane? Is there anything that makes the ball dead beyond those for high school?
Like you're talking about, like, obviously, so you're talking about defense jumps into the neutral zone, we shut it down immediately. If any kicked ball breaks the plane to the goal line and it's not an opportunity to score a field goal, the ball's dead. The big thing is if B has 12 players in formation and nobody's trying to leave and nobody's trying to leave and nobody's trying to leave, we'll shut it down for illegal substitution. Because if we let the play go with 12 players in formation, it's now illegal participation at the snap. And that's a 15-yard penalty in high school, whereas that is still illegal substitution in college and is only a 5-yard penalty. Those were your questions, right, Bill?
Yeah, just that the ball remains live much more in college than in high school.
Yep. We're gonna let the offense get the advantage for the defense committing one of those fouls in most cases. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody being on tonight. Our next meeting, I believe I put in that email, is in 2 weeks. The plan right now is to cover COC Quiz 3. So I would encourage you to get after it if you haven't already. And then a couple of weeks after that, Bill Foltz is going to talk about keys and passing formations and stuff like that. So I would encourage you if you can be available for those. But that's all I've got for tonight. I appreciate everybody being on, and hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see everybody soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.